The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot see.
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. Whether you're sharing a personal story or business story, how you share that story matters. It changes how you perceive yourself and how others are experiencing you. So be intentional about the stories you share. Know what you want the person in front of you to think, do, or feel, or even better, what you want to learn about the person, because when you share a brief story of your own, you are likely to unlock the story of the person in front of you. If you're curious about sharing the right story for your next interview, check out my job interview storytelling course on Udemy. You can find that on the link on my website, elkinsconsulting.com. Today's guest, I love the story of how we met. His name is Devon Hayes, and he actually lives in Billings, Montana, which is about a 3.5 hour drive from where I live in Montana. And a few weeks ago, I was listening to public radio, and I heard an interview with a man that sounded really interesting. And I remember sitting in the car as I got home so that I could continue to listen to the interview for a few more minutes before I got out and went in to make dinner. And I remember thinking, I wonder who this guy is, because I didn't hear his name. I only heard him talking about a big event that he had and all of the volunteer work he does in Billings and his family and how important that is to him. And I thought he'd make a really good guest on my podcast. I should figure out who this guy is. And I had every intention of going into my house and looking up the public radio website so that I could find out who it was in this interview. And then it was out of my head. And the very next day, I got a connection request on LinkedIn from a man in Billings that I thought, no, that can't be right. But once I dove into your profile, Devon, I knew it was you, which I don't believe in coincidence. So I was completely thrown by it, thinking that was the coolest thing that had happened to me in a long time, that kismet, that it was meant to be kind of feeling. And so listeners, I almost immediately asked him if he'd be a guest on my podcast, but as soon as we started connecting through LinkedIn. So Devon, thank you so much for recording this with me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really happy to be on the show with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. Thank you so much.
Me too. So, because you listened to a few episodes, that I love to start the conversation by asking you a question, asking you to share something about yourself that most people probably don't know about you. It's not on your LinkedIn profile, it's not in your bio. And I know you're kind of an open book when it comes to your public face, because you've organized TEDx events and you've done a lot of interviews. So it might be hard, but I hope you have something in your head so that our listeners can get a different perspective of who you are through this story.
Well, I think something maybe you wouldn't necessarily see in what I put out online is that I'm a lover of music. I always have been. I grew up playing the viola, and so I have a deep love for classical music and string instruments. And music is kind of what I would consider to be the key that unlocks the universe, right? It's kind of that piece that no matter who you are and where you're from, we can usually find a tune to bob our heads to and agree that, this is a good thing. And so music is kind of my escape. It's how I get motivated, or if I'm in a bad mood, it's how I bring myself out of that bad mood. I just listen to a couple of my favorite songs, and all is right in the world. And so I think that's the case for a lot of people. And I think that music is just a really interesting thing that has stood the test of time. When in a day and age where so many things are changing all the time, music has always stayed kind of that corner piece in society, and it's always been a big part of my life. So much so that I actually almost tried out for The Voice one year, and I never did do that, but I almost did, and I plan to maybe do that in the future. So I don't really put that out into the world a lot. So there you go. Music is my love and kind of my escape.
Well, now that you put it out to the world, something's going to happen with
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Are you still playing an instrument?
You know what? I do not play an instrument. I did purchase a violin when my first daughter, when we found out my that we were going to have a child, and my hope was that I would relearn how to play that instrument, because playing an instrument is kind of like a muscle. If you don't use it, you tend to lose it. And so I don't really play anymore, but I do plan to pick it up, and hopefully my daughter will do the same.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's kind of amazing how having a kid reminds you of those things, right? Like
Hmm.
I remember I had been a performer, a singer in choirs for most of my life, and I played the flute in middle school. And I remember um, I had kind of given it up. I moved to Washington, D.C. after college and had a paid internship, and I auditioned for an audition only choir in the district and didn't get in. And I remember
Mm.
thinking, well, that's a sign. I guess I'm done with this for in my life. And then when I met my husband a few years later, I remember the first time I woke up in his apartment after we'd been dating for a little bit, and I heard this guitar, and I was thinking, wow, that's so pretty. I wonder what he's playing. And I thought it was the radio or an album or something or a tape. This was back in 1995. And I remember walking out in my bathrobe and seeing him play his acoustic guitar. And he was playing a song called Martha's Song, which is just this really pretty, kind of mellow morning song. And I
Yes.
thought, oh, I've been missing music. I've been
Yes.
missing that.
Hmm.
So tell me about what is your first memory of that love for music?
My first memory for the love of music was in orchestra class. I think I was in fourth grade, and the teacher that I had at that point in time was just a phenomenal person. And she really kind of took me under her wing and invested a little bit more time into me, because I think she could tell that it was something that I was really enjoying. And I remember it very clearly because we were playing hot cross buns. But
A
for
very
some
first of every
reason,
band.
yeah, for some reason it just clicked, and that kind of just sparked the fire that ultimately led me down that path. Unfortunately, I also did sports during school, and once I got into high school, I decided that sports were cooler, and so I didn't continue to play all the way through high school. I decided sports would be the direction I would go. And so, looking back, I wish I would have continued that. I wish I still played to this day. And so, it is on my to-do list to take that
Pick
back
it up.
up and then hopefully pass that along to my children.
So, those of our listeners that have had kids in band or orchestra or did it themselves, I'm sure that your memory of sitting in that band room, playing that for the first time, having the teacher go, "Oh, he's finding love here." I mean, because you can see it in a
Hmm.
person's face, right? And you're
Hmm.
playing. I love that you remember that the song was Hot Cross Buns. That is, I love that you remember that. And I'm remembering sitting in band room playing my flute in seventh grade with the band. And I also have a vivid memory of seeing our older son who picked the cello sitting in that
Hmm.
band room and picking out the notes and having an ear for it. But the other memory that came to me was why I picked the flute, because I had picked up a violin in fourth grade. And my parents were like, oh no. I remember trying to practice the violin, but stringed instruments they require a different kind of coordination, a
Right.
different kind of agility in your fingers than the
Hmm.
flute or any of the wind instruments. So, what made you decide on the viola?
I think it was just that everybody else was doing band and was playing the saxophone or the flute or the trombone or whatever it may be, drums. And I think I just wanted to do something different. And plus, I liked the way that it looked. when I watched people play string instruments, and to watch an orchestra just produce the sounds that they produce, it just really intrigued me. And so I think it was two parts. One, I just saw that everybody else was doing the other thing, and I thought, well, maybe I should do something else. And then two is I saw that I just really liked the way that it looked and the way that it sounded. And The Devil Went Down to Georgia was always a really song that
Right.
I always really enjoyed. And when I found out that that song was played through a fiddle, and fiddle is traditionally a viola, I decided, that's the instrument I want to play.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so interesting when you tell that story. I learned so much about you in just that 1 minute story about wanting to stand out, choosing to take the road less traveled, as Robert Frost might say,
Mhm.
and also the aesthetics of how you see things. And I see behind you your business name, 406 Media, is right there. So aesthetics are important. Sound is important. So I love that this came out in you as early as fourth grade. And just to give you a little bit of hope here, I stopped playing the flute right before ninth grade because I got braces, or right in ninth grade because I got braces, and I couldn't get the embouchure right of my lips. I couldn't get them over the braces in order to get the best sound. And so
Mhm.
rather than keep trying to get the good sound, which people do, they play with their braces, I gave up. I was like, nope, this is too hard. And I started singing, which is great because singing, you don't need anything external to practice.
Right.
But in 2020, I took my original Artley flute that I was gifted when I was in second grade, and I took it over to the music store, dropped it off because everything was shut down in March and April, completely shut down, and I dropped it off in their the entryway of their store, and they cleaned it up, replaced the pads, brought it back to life. And I bought a beginner's band book, the same book pretty much that I would have played in seventh grade, even though I had
Hmm.
been playing since second grade, but middle school band book. And I brought it home and I played the flute through that band book 5 or 6 or 7 times until I could remember, till I got the muscle memory back. And so I could remember to read music and the notes and how that worked and the fingering, the finger charts. And
Hmm.
now, 4 years later, actually last year, 3 years later, I was playing that flute with our rock band.
Oh, I love that.
So I don't know. Hopefully that gives you some comfort because it's going to come back to you more than you think it
Yes.
will.
Yes. I hope that you're right. I look forward to picking it back up. Kudos to you for jumping in and doing it. I mean, that
It's
shows a lot
terrifying.
about yourself. Um, yeah, I really commend you for doing that, and I look forward to hopefully doing the same thing. I've
Thank you.
attempted to do it a couple of times, and I just keep getting busy with other stuff, and it keeps getting pushed down. But it is something I want to do, and it's something that my daughter is very much interested in now, and so I think really soon is going to be the time to start taking that up.
For sure. And I have to say that I saw my mom go back to school at almost 40 with three teenagers at home. And she went back to school because she had always wanted to be a nurse. She
Hmm.
had had a degree in education. She was teaching and substitute teaching while we were little, but she just had this in her head that she always wanted to be a nurse. She went back to school at 38, 39 years old, graduated in 4 years with her RN, summa cum laude. So I watched her go back to school as a
Hmm.
non-traditional age student. I watched her study. I saw how she was, I didn't know this at the time, but she was modeling lifelong learning right there and fulfilling a dream regardless of your age. So when I was, let's see, our boys were in third and fifth grade, or fourth and sixth grade when I went back to school for my MBA. And I remember sitting at the dining room table, opening up my laptop and modeling what my mother modeled for me, for my kids, how important education is, how lifelong learning can look no matter where
Yeah.
you are in your life. So when you pull out that violin or viola and start playing it and you go through your old band book, your daughter's going to see that. It's going to light her up. Even if she never decides to do it, you're modeling exactly what you want to model for her. So go for it.
Yes, I love that.
Oh, awesome. So as we are moving through your story, and we've only hit on little tiny bits of it, what I think would be interesting to our listeners now is to hear what you're doing now in terms of your income producing activities. I don't like calling it a job. I don't like calling it work because it's not necessarily where you're doing it, it's what you're doing and how you're doing it. So
Right.
tell us what you do without telling us what you do by sharing a story of a recent work experience that brought you great satisfaction.
Hmm. Gosh. So currently work as a telecommunicate in telecommunications. I do commercial sales, just to put it very simply. But I find enjoyment in that because I get to work with people and I get to work with new people every single day, and I get to learn about their businesses and about them and about what makes them tick. And I found it through my career. The reason why I've been so successful is that I can build relationships with almost anybody. And I can leverage those relationships to help them find solutions or to help us find a common good for everybody involved. And so that's what I really, really enjoy doing. That's what I do on a daily basis. That's how I earn the bulk of my income. Um, and so that has led me to primarily sales and marketing careers. And so
So,
that's what I do.
with a recent client, I'll give you an example. I mentioned before I hit record that in the last 2 weeks, I worked with about 300 engineers doing an introduction to StrengthsFinder, which is that Gallup tool, the assessment that helps us understand how we approach problem solving. It's not a personality assessment, really. It's more about what's your initial approach when a project or problem drops in your lap, or a relationship building kind of
Mhm.
tool. And in those sessions, I did 8 90-minute sessions, all the same session 8 times with a total of about 300 engineers. And my moment came in the fourth of 8. And I remember this so vividly. I was trying to set up an understanding of the practical aspect of this tool. That was my goal, is for these people who might be skeptics because they have things like analytical in their top talents. And so they're not sure that this could possibly be an accurate tool. So I was setting
Mhm.
this up, and there's a talent called achiever, which is very, very goal oriented. And then there's a talent called developer, which is the part of a person that loves to see and celebrate incremental improvement. And those can be really, they can cause conflict when they're in two different people, especially if one is a boss or a teacher and the achiever is the student or the employee. So I asked an achiever, I said, so tell me what it feels like when you don't reach the goal, when you've set a goal and you don't reach it when you thought you would reach it. And the guy
Mhm.
said, oh my gosh, it's so frustrating to me. I have such a hard time with that. It just really grates. I feel really dissatisfied when I don't meet a goal the way that I thought I would. And
Mhm.
I looked at the developer and I said, okay, you have developer. What do you say to that achiever when they don't reach the goal? And the developer said, well, I ask a lot of questions, kind of figure out why. And I said, well, what do you say to help the person like get over it, to not
Mhm.
feel so disappointed by it? And he said, well, I tell them how far we've come already. Well, look where we started and now here we are. And I said, I looked straight at the achiever and I said, how does that land with you when you hear those words? Because I knew. And he goes, oh, that does not help me at all. As a matter of fact,
Right.
it's almost insulting to hear that. And the guy with the developer was surprised, right, to hear that
Right.
his encouragement landed so badly for this person. And I said, if you get nothing else from this 90 minutes, look at how understanding each other's talents can change how you talk to each other.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
value of understanding what motivates somebody versus what's going to insult them or make them not feel any better. And you could see like the whole room shifted in that moment. It
Mm.
was the coolest moment. And I thought, yes, this is why I do what I do. So I know you have a story in your head about how you solved a problem for somebody. So you
Mm,
don't have to use names, of course, but
right.
tell me about a client experience where you were like, oh, yes, this is why I love what I do.
Gosh, you know, I've got a lot of things that run through my head. I don't have a particular story. You say um, you said that I know that you have a story floating around. I actually don't. I have a few things rolling through my head. None of them pertain directly to what I do to earn my, living, the bulk of my income. They would actually probably pertain more to what I do for my community and what I do just out of really the need that I feel internally to just do something to make an impact or to push my community forward in a way that I feel needs to be done. So the story that I would give wouldn't be pertaining to my day job.
Doesn't matter.
But
I want to hear what lights you up.
yeah, what really lights me up is watching other people reach their goals and do the things that they think are really, really hard or that they were really, really nervous about, and then just watch them blossom right in front of me. That is what I really get enjoyment out of. I spent a short stint of my career as a nutrition consulting general manager for a business here in Billings. And I loved that job because I got to watch people transition right in front of my eyes from a point in time when they were not confident at all in themselves, and in fact, beating themselves up very badly, and watch that transformation take place to all of a sudden being this confident person that reached the goals that they set in the initial meeting that we had with each other, and kind of riding off into the sunset, a new version of themselves, or the TEDx speakers that we select. And you can tell on the day of selection, they are just shaking with nerves. And throughout the entire process of helping them edit their talks and you watching them rehearse on stage and all sorts of stuff. And then to end up on the day of the event and watch them walk out on the stage in front of a few hundred people and just crush the talk and then walk off the stage in a totally different manner than they did the first time. That's where that's what lights me up. That's what I get really, really excited about. That's where I find the motivation to continue doing that and to find new people that I can help in those kind of ways. And so that's what I really enjoy. My
Well,
day job,
I
I get to do those kinds of things, but it's different for me, and it's kind of it's easier. I don't want to say it's easy, but it kind of is on the sales end of things, and so it doesn't
because you're
light
so
me up.
good at it. You've been doing it so long.
Well, it just yeah, the sales make it just makes sense because hey, you have this issue or this problem with your organization. I've got this really great solution. Makes sense. Let's move forward. Everybody's happy. Of course, it benefits me and in my bottom line, and the income I bring into my family. So you get some warm and fuzzies there, but the real impact for me is what I do to help other people get to where they want to be, or to help them share their stories, or to watch them grow right in front of my eyes into the person they didn't think that they could be when we first met, and just to watch that
Mhm.
process is incredible.
Well, what I'm hearing is that it's that aspect of seeing the development of somebody, the
Mm,
transformation, and being a foundational aspect of that development, knowing that one of my friends, we were talking about women helping women, and I was describing one of my friends that is just always looking out for the other women, especially entrepreneurs in her life. And our audience can't see this, but I'm going to describe it as I do it. I said, I love to be among women where when somebody says, I want to be up there, and they point, and I lace my fingers together and make a handhold so that they can put their foot in there and I can boost them up. That's how I
hmm.
imagine that kind of role. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to challenge people when they say that they want to do something. It's really interesting. People will say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll ask them to say a little bit more about that. And then they'll say, well, I want to do this. Well, wait a second. Just a second ago, you said you were going to do it. Now it's just a want. And then pretty soon it's like, well, maybe I'll do that. What happened in that process? Because
Right.
initially you said this is what you will do. And now
How
it's
did you
just a
talk
want.
yourself out of it, right?
Right.
How did you talk yourself out of it?
And
So
really
tell
often it's
me,
just that they they know that if they say that it's something they will do, then they have to do it. And if they don't, there's a shame in that they feel. And so
right,
how do we stay away from that and just push towards let's go make that happen?
right. And making sure it's what they really want. I think
Right.
one of the mistakes I've made is wanting something more than they wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Early in my coaching, even with professional speakers and people who wanted to do more public speaking. And they would tell me that they would hire me, we'd be working toward it, and then they would kind of falter. And I would, you know, are you sure this is what you want? And every once in a while, because I would say, okay, what are you going to do next week? And what are you going to do before our next meeting? Here are some ideas. And then we'd meet, and they wouldn't have done any of it. And there was
Mm-hmm.
a point with two in my head where I had to say, I can't want this more than you want this.
Right.
My friend Nikki told me that she does that with her training clients because she helps with
Yeah.
nutrition and physical fitness and everything. And she said that, and I realized how important that is to understand for those of us who are coaching and guiding people. I can't want it more than you want it. So
Yes.
that feels like a failure to me sometimes, like on me. How did I not get this person to where they needed to be? What did I miss in here? And of course, that has nothing to do with me usually. So when was a time where um, you experienced that, where you had to take that step back?
Yeah. I experienced that almost on a daily basis in that personal training, nutrition consulting role, like you just described with your friend. And that's something that you definitely have to grapple with as a coach in that realm is that people will walk into the door really fired up about something initially. But if there's hurdles in the way, some people can get through those and some people can't. And so in some cases, the motivation fades away and being the person that I am, I care very much about seeing that goal be accomplished. But like you said, you can't care about it more than that person does. And that was something that was very hard for me initially in realizing that I was that way and that people just couldn't get out of their own way in some cases. And that's just something that I accepted and would try to preempt as much as you can through my conversations thereafter,
Mhm.
realizing that this was going on. But you can never get rid of that completely until you really dive deeply with somebody, because people are
Right,
really good about convincing you that this means everything to them. It's
right.
when the hurdles and the obstacles come up that you really find out how much it means to somebody.
Yeah, that hard work part.
Mhm.
That's yeah, you have to really want something. So as we come full circle to your music and this love for music and all of these community things that you're coordinating and involved in and loving, what what's one of those community things that you're involved in that you would want a larger audience to hear about?
Oh gosh, all of them is
Of
the
course, of course.
answer.
That's how
All of
that
them is
works.
the answer. The one that's my baby, the one that I've really taken a lead on is TEDx Billings. Um, so I organize the local TEDx talks here in Billings, and um, that is one that is very special to me because my team and I have been kind of the ones to resurrect the TEDx Billings and to kind of turn it into what it is today, something that we're really, really proud of. And my heart is always only to share that with as many people as possible. TEDx, as you probably know, is all about ideas worth sharing. And we all have an idea worth sharing. We all have a story worth telling. And so I just get a real enjoyment out of doing that and doing it in such a way that also highlights the community that these people come from and the community that we live in. Because I think that we have an identity crisis in Billings and somewhat, I would say, in Montana. And we don't do a really good job of sharing the cool things and the incredible people that we have here. We like to keep
Agreed.
things secret and not share them because we don't want everybody else to know how great it is here, right? But at some point, that starts to have a negative effect. I am born and raised here in Billings. And if you're born and raised here in Billings, or I would think Montana, maybe some of the other cities don't have it as much as Billings, but there's this sense and there's this belief that you got to get out of here to make anything of yourself. Like when I grew up in Billings, it was, what are you going to do after you graduate? Well, I'm going to do anything but stay here. I'm going to go anywhere else but stay here, right? Bozeman, Missoula, Denver, Seattle, California, or East Coast, like anywhere but here. And that's not a good thing to as a community for your youth to grow up thinking that and believing that and just having this sense that they need to leave, right? If your community is going to grow and thrive, we need to retain our young people. They need to believe that this is a place where things happen and where they can envision a bright future for themselves. And, I had to move away to realize that. Unfortunately, I moved and lived in California for some time. I lived in Colorado for some time. I also lived in Washington for a little bit. And all of those places just made me realize how great Billings in Montana was and that I just wanted to come back. And so now that I'm back, I want to do my part to showcase all of the great things, incredible people, and wonderful ideas that are here. And TEDx is my way of doing that. And so you asked, what would I want more eyes on or more people to be a part of? It would be that in either sharing their stories or their ideas or just show up to our event, be a part of the conversation because there's really nothing like it. They're really unique events and every single one is different because it's typically a different group of people that attend.
Right.
So that's the one I would say is front.
That's great. And I really don't think that's unusual for young people to want to leave where they grew up for a while and then come back. I know that I went to high school in Colorado Springs, and many of us left Colorado Springs to go explore after high school or even college. And then quite a few of my high school friends moved back to Colorado Springs or Colorado, somewhere in the state, after they explored. And I don't think that's unusual. And truly, I think it's a good thing for people to get out and see what they're missing to come home. You had to leave to realize how great Billings was. And I have two grown sons, 25 and 22, and one of them stayed and the other is exploring. But I have no doubt that at some point, the younger one will realize what he's missing and maybe come back, but maybe not. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, you want your kids to explore, right? And see things that are different.
I do. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I would just say that I think there is a difference between that and just this overwhelming sense that there's no opportunity in our community. There's nothing happening. There's nobody doing cool things or doing things on a large scale, right? And
totally agree.
And if we shared those things, then hopefully we can start to stop that belief from permeating within our youth.
they'll know there's more to come back to and that they can
Right.
contribute. I think that's like the key is how are you going to contribute when you get back to continue this trend of fun and entertainment and learning and growth. And the other thing that popped into my head was that when you're born and raised in one place, sometimes you have to leave in order for people to understand your transformation. I can say that I worked for government agencies here in Helena for years. And when I started my business, there were so many times where people were hiring outsiders to do the things that I do really well. And one of my friends said, well, you can't be a prophet in your own town.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, yeah, they have only ever seen me in these roles. They don't realize how much I've transformed my own knowledge and skills over the past 10 years.
Right.
So again, that's another reason people sometimes need to leave so that they can come back to the fresh eyes of people seeing them for the growth that they've experienced, which is sad because you can grow and change in the same place. But we as humans continue to see that older version. We just have a hard time seeing transformation, especially if we don't like it, if it doesn't fit our view of what we wanted it to be. So.
Right.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know that your TEDx is getting lots of eyes on it right now. I know I was looking at it last year, but the timing didn't work for me. And I would love to be involved, even as a supporter, show up to watch the speakers, whatever I can do to help share those messages, because I agree, Montana has so much to offer right here. The residents of our state that are contributing in such beautiful ways to their communities, just like you.
Yes. I would love to have you at one of our events. We have two this year, one on July 19th and one on October 11th. So if you can make either date, please let me know. I would love to have you here and host you in Billings. That would be just great.
Thank you. That will be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it. Devon, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Just so our listeners know, all of Devon's links will be in the show notes associated with this episode at elkinsconsulting.com. So you can go to that website and click on any of the links to connect with Devon, to check out the TEDx Billings event, and get your tickets so that you can go in July or October. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to know about, Devon?
No, I would just say thank you, Sarah, for your time. Thank you for having me on your show. It was a great conversation. I look forward to future conversations and to hopefully hosting you here in Billings at one of our events. I will definitely let you know when I'm in your area next, and hopefully link up there as well.
Go for a hike.
Just thank you for the invitation. It was a great time. It's always great to get to know someone new, and hopefully this is just the start of our relationship.
Absolutely. I have zero doubts about that. Listeners, now it's your turn. I want to know what you're going to pick up that you put aside years before. What is one of those ideas you've had in your head that you want to start again, that maybe you started in the past and gave up too soon? I want to know about this, and Devon wants to know about this and how we can support you in reaching that goal or sharing that idea so that you feel compelled to complete it. Comment on this podcast episode, either on my website or wherever I share it, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.